problems that they've created, you haven't seen people who have been allegedly representatives of different nation states, why you have not been hearing them talking about national identity cards. But because it's been corrupting the political economic platforms of nations around the world, you're hearing more and more people who claim to be government talking about national IDs. This is funny. But you never see them enforcing it because the point of it is they're private corporations and people who have been pretending to be nationals when in fact they're not. Were not and are not. It's kind of caught in kind of a catch-22 situation for them.
Questions? Okay. So here's a question. Well, here I'll do this one. This came up a couple times. Who is it that wants to know? Tarik wants to know, Brother Taj, are you familiar with the sister out of Georgia, Chief Janice, dealing with the land patents?
The land patents basically have been issued by hybrid Europeans among themselves to steal our land. And though that process in its principle should be correct, but the people of the land have what you call aboriginal claims superior to all of those instrumentalities. However, superior to the mortgages and deed claims is the land patent that is acknowledged.
Here's another question, and I had to pull up my poem because I feel like you can respond to it, but I also want to share this poem. Yeah. Raynard G. Hines says, so if it's a God, what is he or she waiting for? Or is God in us and we need to act?
Now, again, I'm glad that question was asked because it's also part of the paradigm of the purging that must take place among humanity, because there's an assumption of the God position that is totally and has been totally incorrect. And that must be worked out. And so in the nature of the question, on the surface, the question is loaded because the question truthfully has been a part of the mental mind control training that the people have received, thinking that God means the creator when it does not. God is a verb transitive that means to call upon, to invoke, and to pour out, and is not a being whatsoever, nor is it the creator. Although the word is loosely attached to the source or the creative sources, taken as one, etc., and has been generally accepted. And often we will use that word in implying the creative forces. However, it is an improper usage. Unfortunately, but that's true too. And that must be worked out. And so therefore, by people assuming that it means the creator, often people would construct in their mind, how can God stand by and let all this BS go on? And how come he or she or it ain't doing their job? Because the assumption has been that the God is going to save us or rescue us, when the real deal, the rescue will be within. It's in you, i.e., that's the truth.
Can I share when we gonna be?
Yes.
As a response to that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a poem I wrote 2016, July. It says, it's called When We Gonna Be, and hopefully this is also answering your question. Trying to figure out who we really want to be, but still fighting and settling for a false identity that distorts and conceals our true nationality while trading places with the real enemy. Wake up, get up. When we really gonna see? Do you know why there's no ground on which to stand? Because we're looking for redemption, unaware we're on our land. They've got us focused on returning to one small patch of ground when throughout the universe can our presence be found. We're embracing his story while neglecting the glory of our ancient existence and deity. Truth is, living like thugs and paupers is the real tragedy. We protest and march blindly like lemmings off an edge, but can't find time to study for some real knowledge. Predictably programmed for social response and reaction, oblivious to the fact that we're being strategically distracted by the coordinated efforts of so-called deep state factions. Will our ignorance help their plan to depopulate the land So robotic AI becomes their newest slaves as we continually cry out to their mythos, what must I do to be saved? Or will we rise above their lies and reconnect with the Most High, who's not distant in the skies, but inside you, where true divinity resides? Time to call forth the divine spark of light that decided with determined might to journey 9 months to a distant world to take up residence in a baby boy or girl. See, I'm not trying to raise a stink, but I am trying to get you to think on a more critical level. You must know who is the real devil and not be fooled by what you're shown. The jig is up. Their cover is blown. This stuff ain't real. It's all a dream tied to an elaborate hocus pocus scheme to keep everyone ignorant and under subjection and the world in chaos in need of correction. See, they've never played fair. They play straight down the middle. And right now, most folks being played like a fiddle. So we must stop looking for help to come from a system that was designed to keep us trapped without wisdom. I know for a fact we are the answer we desire to see. So tell me, my people, when we gonna be? Ashe.
Ashe.
It is us.
See, this is the deal. We've been trained under animal husbandry for so many generations to look for some demigods to come and save us from forced servitude and foreign unum sanctum dum diversus colonial operations and occupations, that we forgot that whole paradigm of thinking was introduced to us, but was not in the nature of the philosophies or the religions of our forefathers, but actually is a total mind control social solace system that was introduced to us generationally and gradually, to the point that we confuse that with our Asiatic African ancestors' Coptic philosophies, of which it has no part.
Here's another question from Daniel Tavares. How wants to know how this connects to the warnings issued about the coming global life support system collapse and biowarfare.
Yes, what you're seeing is the doctrine of discovery, unum sanctum, inter caetera divinus operations actually being in fact and in reality countered for real on a global scale. That's what's going on. And so the dark priesthood that has been ruling the world, particularly since the fall of the Moors and the running of the Moors out of Iberia, and they will call it, one of the celebrations that they call it is St. Patrick's Day.
Tag.
And they also refer to it as Tag Day. And they also refer to it in the negative, with a negative connotation that is not properly comprehended or taught. They'll say they're running the snakes out of Ireland. And since then, they have been corrupting both the culture, the different terms, they're corrupting the true knowledge of the snakes and serpent, etc., misjudging deliberately all of that culture, distinguished from its relationship metaphorically to the operations of Kundalini, etc., and has used the corruption and the dark side of Babylonian magic for ruling the world, and have actually contaminated the whole world, and have people actually hating their own culture because it's being misrepresented by the hybrid Europeans, and also causing them to reject their own culture, not knowing the metaphorical and anthropomorphic different systems by which much of the culture has been promoted over the years, and therefore not being able to intelligently and rationally make the distinction between friend and enemy, friend or foe, truth and falsehood, which is what's really taking place on the planet today. However, because the people are beginning to think critically on all fronts and questioning all things, as should be, these things are in the process of working themselves out divinely. And like Noble Drew Ali always said, if I could just get you all thinking again, you'd save yourselves. And that is in process right now. And it's not limited to the Aboriginal Moors of North America. It is now operating on the planet at large with all nations, all tribes, all political platforms. Not admitted by all, but that's what's taking place anyway. That's why I've reminded people, even though you're looking at logically and properly at all of these things from a metaphysical, cosmological horoscope on the geography of the planet, and also on the single units of the monads in their horoscopes, etc. I always remind people to also just in a more simplistic form, watch what Uranus is doing. That's not neglecting the issue of Saturn and the other planets, particularly ruling the Aquarian energies at this time. But just look at that, and then you look at the politics, and you'll see how the electrical charge is tearing up all of this stuff. And everything or anything that anyone claims to be, or any presentment that they make to the world in the manifest third degree and or third dimensional plane, that's coming from the nature of the energies of the priesthood from the Piscean era, is being dismantled and will not survive in the Aquarian light. And it's accentuated by Uranus. That's not a neglect of a refined analysis, cosmological, but I think that would help a lot of people who are not cosmologically astute yet.
Morsha America asks, do we send our suits to the corporate state courts?
You would, whenever there's a claim made, those are essential rebuttals, or what you call impropria persona, established for the record status. Because remember, usually when the because remember, state courts are not constitutional courts, so they're not courts. They just simply are not. However, because they're operating under with de facto authority, this is another reason why you issue bills of return of attender. And no, other than your cover sheet of your status correction, etc., is all is needed. Not all your paperwork. That's all. These writs, fundamentally on the surface, is all they need to know. It'd be correction of status. So there's no assumed in personam jurisdiction where it does not exist. So when the pre-assumed, because remember, the assumed jurisdictional in personam jurisdiction that are operative in most of the instrumentalities that sent to you from them is with the assumptions of jurisdiction via the nom de guerre or the misclassification of the being in the first place. This is why it's only necessary to send even the cover of the status correction. All the other instrumentality is not even necessary because it's your business, not theirs. Their only business as being government or claiming to have authority of government, etc., in any capacity, is enforcement of the Constitution and treaty. And if that's not presented to you, their position is fraudulent. They have no other service to you. Keep that in mind. And this is back to the problem also that many people have of expecting things from these people who are claiming government who are not government, never was. Government has no rights to give you or to afford you. Government has only duties and obligations via treaty and constitution. If you write that down and keep that in mind, you'll know how you're supposed to be talking to these beings.
Okay, Amin Bey asks, since the organic constitution has 7 articles and 10 amendments, does that mean everything after the 10th amendment is fraudulent, even if their dates were before the coup d'etat of 1871?
All things, see, this is the deal. All introductions to the Constitution for the United States that took place after 1781, etc., are de facto. That's fact.
Okay. Patrick Jean Marie asked, how do we sue the state's attorney general for damages produced by the state of?
This is, again, constitutional and treaty, because keep in mind, treaty and constitutional enforcement is the platform. The platform by which all nation states deal with other nation states in international affairs is through a consular venue. Because the people have not been enforcing the Constitution as Drew Ali commanded them to do, Article 3, Section 2 would be indicative of the ministers and the consular positions and the ambassadors' positions of any particular nation state to deal with any controversy concerning peoples or properties in the enforcement of treaties. So that would be United States law of a general and permanent character in force, etc. Title 22, Title 22, yeah, Chapter 22, Section 141, 142, 143, etc. And this is essentially the fundamentals that I've talked about for the last 30 some odd years in lesson book 14A1, 14A, 14A1. 14A1 is the original text with all of the general footnotes, and 14, lesson book 14, is the general abridged copies that have been floating around with people for the last 25, 30 years or so. But essentially, that the venue, the proper venue would be consular, and this is where people who claim to be government in any framework whatsoever, doesn't matter what club they belong to, what so-called religion they claim, this is universal principle. Your communication platform is from a consular venue with them, not with yourself, but with them.
Okay. Here's a question from Me Relieve Chronicle. Dr. G, please ask Todd just how bad is the shadow government secret cloning of everyday citizens and replacement with nanobot controlled humans?
You can see what you're dealing with when you're talking about shadow government is essentially still dom diversus and unum sanctum operations. They're given a different name, but it's the same thing. Same entity, same persons by virtue of what is known as corporate write this down, you all, corporate descendancy. And so the operations of the United States Corporation Company, i.e. often referred to as the corporations, etc., is really unum sanctum operations. That's the fact. Also known as the U.S. democracy. It is same unum sanctum operations. Also known as the U.S. without qualification. Because remember, the United States is a political metaphor that is used by many nation states. As an example, San Salvador is United States. Brazil is United States. Mexico is the United States. But that's part of their political designation. But you notice that at North America, there's no national name. As an example, Mexico, North America, and South America. It's part of North America of the continent, right? And you'll see Estados Mexico. You'll see see Brazil. Estados Unidos do Brasil. So that's United States of Brazil. That's America. Brazil is America. But you see that Brazil is the nation state. Mexico is the nation state. You notice that the partnership with Canada, the United States, it doesn't have a national name. It's just a corporate designation. You see? And most people never pick that up. And many people who, particularly those who don't want their so-called members, club members to know civics, never point that out to them because they don't want you to recognize that you're operating under a fraudulent platform. Because many of them are, say, what you might say, in partnership with some kickbacks in the background. One of the kickbacks is known as the 501c3 corporation or non-disclosure agreement not to rock the boat, called 501c3. And so they won't talk about things that we're talking about because they really never have been and aren't in the business of helping to liberate humanity or the people or help them in self-determination, but are in fact cleverly and surreptitiously aiding in their subjugation and getting a benefit for maintaining that dead status. This is why you'll see the corporate operatives will always promote any so-called organizations that run around calling people black Negroes and talk about it matters. Yeah, it matters for them to maintain the color law operations because no such people exist. However, there is a nom de guerre operations of people who are categorized under the Christian black codes that are stated as U.S. property on the stock market, 55 Water Street, whether it's marriage certificate, birth certificates, and other instrumentality that actually fund the criminal operations of the U.S. corporation, members of the Roman Curia, who have been pretending for a couple, over 100 years, pretending to be a nation state.
Habits for Life wants to know your thoughts on the mothership.
The mothership or ships? See,
the mothership.